All right, so talking about budget bikes and some of the recent things I've said with my Vitus Mythique bike check or bike review. Right when I bought that bike, they re-released or released the 2021 models, and Polygon did the same thing, and now I'm noticing some different things with the new models, mostly with Polygon. Vitus had some minor changes in their 2021 lineup, and Polygon really went out of their way to do a lot of different and interesting stuff, and that definitely affects some of the opinions that I have and things I've said in previous videos. So that said, do I still think that the VR is the best budget bike? If you only have $1,500 to spend, then I still stand by that statement. For $1,500, Polygon released a D6 model for MSRP at $1,400. This is a good option, but it has what I would call some of the quirks that the 2020 models had in general that I didn't like. Namely, that fork, let's check the specs real quick. The fork is 100 mil through axle. That's not going to be a big deal for like 99% of users. But for me, considering that these other models have a nice new boost, modern boost axle, that's nice. But also this bike is generally more for like cross country or basic trail riding. The frame is a bit higher slung. And then if we can click on geometry down here, head tube angle 67. So is this bike good for the price? Yes, it's great. But when I was talking about from my personal experience, from my personal level of riding, I like the low slung nature and slack head tube of the VR and the Polygon 2021 T7. So we're going to move past these bikes. So these ones are pretty easy to choose from if you end up choosing between these, because they're very close. This one's $1,500, this one is $1,400, and on sale for $1,300. And another Polygon quirk that Polygon, you still have the thing where if you're large, you can't get a 27.5. Not that it's a huge deal, but it does suck if you're just in between those sizes. Like if you just really wanted a large 27.5, which is specifically what I ride. But at the same time, it's like if you're getting a 27.5 and you want to be turning faster and jumping faster, then maybe you wouldn't mind so much a smaller frame and smaller bike. If you want a large, you'll clearly be able to ride on a 29er just as well. So that's a bit of a trade-off, bit of a compromise. Whereas the Vitus comes in 27 and 29 for every single spec model they have. So moving past these ones, this bike is great for trail riding, XC riding, with some small quirks that aren't that big a deal. This bike, the one I got, but this is the update model with the dropper, which is great. And they didn't even bump the price with the dropper. This bike, especially because, and this is a thing that's bothering me on my current bike, the shock does not have a lockout. It's the Pro R, not the Pro RL. So it doesn't have the lockout, but with the slacker head tube and the lower slung top tube, it's it's like for a certain type of rider. It's for the rider that's not trying to lock out and do XC rides all day. They get up the mountain one way or another, and then all they care about is going down and having the most fun possible. So these bikes are easy to choose from. Where it gets really interesting is these bikes. And this is something I want to bring up with when I talk about budget bikes. So is this still the best budget bike? For this literal specific price, yes. For $1,500, yes. And then this bike has a lot of merits too. That's a very close second. Depending on the type of rider you are, you'd prefer that. These bikes, however, are the exact same price point. And whereas I would love to say I prefer the Vitus, my experience with low-end X-Fusion suspension has just completely put me off of that brand. Not too dissimilar from the experiences people have with SRAM SX. My last bike was SRAM NX, and that was decent. I would say on par with Dior. So I've never used SX, but thinking about a drivetrain that's even worse than Dior NX is pretty terrifying, especially for some of the price points people are posting them at. These two bikes are at the same price point, and as you can see here, we have a lower slung head tube, and this one is slacker. I'm pretty sure it's 65.5. Okay, so 65 for small and medium, and 66 for medium, large, XL. That's great. That's just on par with trail geometry. Let's check Vitus's geometry. Good God, chain reaction. You really don't make this easy. Should have just gone to the brand website. All right, what a nightmare. So this is 66 or 66.5, and 27.5 is the same thing. So about in that same range. They're basically both 66 for the majority of riders. So with these bikes being literally the same price, and just at a glance, you're seeing a lot of the same everything. How would you make the difference between these? How would you decide between these? And honestly, they're so close. I mean, at the end of the day, just choose the one you like. But unfortunately, given my experience with the X-Fusion suspension and the fact that this is X-Fusion front and rear, but I will say the fork is not the same as the VR fork, I'm pretty sure. However, the rear shock is the exact same shock. It says it doesn't have a lockout on the info, but the pictures show a lockout. I don't actually know what they shipped this new bike out with. If it has a lockout, that's great. That's a plus, especially for the 1800 price point. If it doesn't have a lockout, that's pretty unfortunate. But ultimately, that is the same shock, the same internals, and I've had a pretty terrible experience with it. Like, it's getting worse. I know I did the update video, and it's honestly gotten worse since then. It just doesn't hold the right amount of air pressure, and it doesn't react the way you would think when you set a certain amount of pressure. It just doesn't feel like any of my adjustments are working or making the changes that I want. The bike I had before this had RockShox suspension, and I enjoyed that. And also the cross-country bike I had before had a Suntour fork, and honestly, that small Suntour air fork had more adjustments and small bump sensitivity than my X-Fusion fork does now. So here's the Polygon T7, Recon Silver fork, and the Deluxe Select Plus shock. RockShox generally puts plus on anything that has a lockout available on it. And then as we zoom in, we can see the lockout switch lever. Not only is this potentially the better bike, in my opinion, the better bike, but I'm also going to go out of my way to try to get my hands on this bike. Not that that's going to be easy. I wouldn't be able to afford this bike without selling my current one, and that's going to make it really hard to potentially do the pre-order that Polygon's been doing lately. It hasn't just been a when it's in stock you have to be the first come first serve. Lately they've been doing, I mean, it's still first come first serve, but they're doing pre-order instead of just buying it. So what that means is I don't want to sell my bike and then not even know how long it's going to take for me to get a replacement bike. I don't want to be without a bike for like a month or two, even though now would be kind of a good time to do it since LA will probably have a lockdown soon. But yeah, I just wanted to go over some of this new information because when I bought my bike, these brands immediately released their 2021 models, and I didn't look at them because I was more focused on my bike, and honestly kind of salty that I just missed the new model release because I paid the same price for the 2020 VR, and I don't have a dropper, so that's kind of a bummer. Kind of a mistake on my part, but I just got unlucky. I think the even worse thing is I didn't realize the X-Fusion suspension could be that bad. Having used low-end Sun Tour before and low-end RockShox before, I thought there was no way I would have a problem. But the more I look around the internet, the more it becomes clear, especially at the lowest end, X-Fusion is just below average, subpar suspension to say the least. So I'd be more than happy to switch to this bike, not only for the lockout switch of the shock and the dropper post, but obviously this Vitus model has that as well. But just being back on RockShox would be nice compared to the experience I've had with X-Fusion so far. And just to go a little bit further and be fair to Vitus, since the VR and the VRS come with X-Fusion, and this is at 1800, just want to make it clear that if you can push your budget to 2K and get the VRX, not only do you get the Marzocchi bomber in the front, which is going to be way better, really good fork, but you do get a RockShox Monarch R in the rear. It does not have a lockout. It looks like it's the R, not the RL or R Pro or whatever. But despite not having a lockout, I can confirm that that shock performs better, as I had it on my last bike and it performed better on that one. Also, before I wrap this up, I made a spreadsheet that compares not just these bikes, but just about every suspension 29er bike in the 1500 to 3000 range. This can be found in the mountain biking Reddit, and if you go to my Reddit account, which is Gundo Skimmer, I'll post it in the description, and I'll post a link to this spreadsheet in the description. So this is going to help you go over all those details that I already just went over. So here we have the Vitus Mythique VR, above average price to performance ratio, which would just be value. Above average value, and it details non-locking shock, drivetrain dropper tubeless, head tube angle, etc. Same with the polygons over here. And I go out of my way to try to color code them in terms of quality, things you should look for and things you should avoid. So thanks for listening. Check that out. I just wanted to clear up some not even necessarily misinformation, but just updated information and what I'm looking to do in 2021. I don't know what to say about X-Fusion, if a lot of other people are having this experience, if I just got unlucky and my shock is just, especially with how hard I ride, maybe internally it's just getting beat up, but there's no chance in hell I'm going to spend money servicing a brand new shock on a budget bike. In 2021, I'll be looking to buy this bike when it becomes available. I think they give a time frame of like sometime in January, but at some point next year, I'm probably getting this bike and we'll do reviews on that. It also means that I will be switching to 29er, which that's fine. I'm riding 27 now and having fun, and I'll just try a 29er. And if I don't like it, I can even return it and do a medium 27. I don't mind that at all. That's not a problem with me. I used to ride BMX all my life, but probably end up on a large 29er, have a lockout lever, and have a bike that's just truly capable of everything, because my Vitus on anything that would be cross-country trail ride is pretty unpleasant for multiple reasons. With this lockout lever and the dropper and the shocks that would be arguably more tunable, it's going to be a lot nicer for some of those non-jumping rides.